is Ruel's Running Podcast, a podcast about running, health, family, play, and an NSNG lifestyle. And now, here's your host, Ruel.
Excuse me as I rock on. That's Went Away by Dorothy Lane. Dorothy Lane out of Martinez, California. That's out of the Cut and Dry album. Check them out at dorothylanemusic.com. Yeah. Hey everybody, it's Ruel Abadam, your host. What's going on? This is the podcast, Ruel's Running Podcast, my podcast, the podcast about this and that and the other thing. How you doing? If you are a new listener, welcome. And this and that and the other thing is very general, and so you should be excited because you're going to get exactly what you want. If you are a return listener, welcome back, guys. I am enjoying a cup of coffee, and wherever you are in the world, whatever time of the day, I don't care if you're sleeping or about to go to bed. I hope you are enjoying a cup of coffee too. And if you can, if you have the resources, if you have the time, check out Pure Coffee Club and get your coffee there, because it's pretty darn good. Yeah, that's just random. Free plug to the folks at purecoffeeclub.com. Awesome. And I just want to get right into it, okay? Let's get into the What's Cooking segment here on the podcast. So what's cooking, y'all? Well, I've been spending a lot of time in the kitchen, and this past weekend we had the pleasure of hosting or getting together for a meal over at our house with some friends. On a Saturday, we had some friends who are practically like family. A mother and her 3 teenage daughters came over, and we haven't seen them since, gosh, it's been years. And over that period of time, the girls had grown from little girls to big girls, and it's funny how time flies, and I wonder if the next time we get to see them, because they're friends out of Utah. They used to live, or at least the mom used to live and work with my wife here in the peninsula of the San Francisco Bay Area, and she many years ago left to Utah and built her family there, and once in a while I get to see them. We're all connected in Facebook, but yeah, we spent time with them on Saturday. My wife and I prepared a bunch of dishes, and we prepared a lot of dishes. I mean, not a lot of dishes, but we prepared a good batch of dishes so that we didn't really have to cook more stuff for the next day where we had planned to get together with somebody else over at our house. So for the weekend, we had chili, and that's a beef chili, and I'll basically make it in a big old pot over the stove. You know, the basic chili, just brown your meat, onions, garlic, and then beans, and a whole lot of beans, you know, and then some diced tomatoes, some canned diced tomatoes, and a bunch of salt, a bunch of ground pepper, and a bunch more, a boatload of chili powder. And we have this chili powder blend, so it's got like chili and cumin and all that good stuff. So pretty pungent and funky, just the way a good chili should be. and made a big old batch of that. Awesome. Nothing complicated, and a lot of food. And despite making a lot of that, we made a pulled pork, and that one's pretty easy too, and I think I've talked about it before. And did that in an instant pot. Just, get a pork butt roast or a pork shoulder roast. I think this was a pork shoulder roast. Take the thing out of the packaging. I always like to take the roast that's, I take back from the butcher or the meat department, and when I unpackage it at home, I'll usually just rinse it off under the faucet, and then pat dry. I don't know. I just like to do that. Just in case, you never know. Oops, the meat fell on the floor, but never mind. Put it in a styrofoam tray and wrap it in plastic and slap a label on it. That can happen. I mean, I've dropped food before for consumption for others, and in the sake of production, I've just sort of let things slip. I'm not proud of it, but I'm kind of proud of it. And I'll have to talk about that later. Anyways, so I'll rinse off and dry the meat, and I'll just dry rub the kosher salt, a lot of salt, ground pepper, a lot of ground pepper, and a good amount of paprika. And that's basically it. And I'll put that in an Instant Pot, right? Then I'll get some onions, and I'll slice some onions, and I'll lay it all over. I'll just dump it in over the top of the roast, and depending on how I feel, I'll throw in some garlic as well, some chopped garlic, minced garlic, rub that all over the meat as well, and I'll get about a half cup of broth, the broth that I make at home in the other Instant Pot. And it sounds kind of douchey that we have two Instant Pots, but yay, Prime Day, you've blessed us with the opportunity to own two of these fantastic appliances. So gets about a half a cup, something around that much, just some moisture of broth in the Instant Pot for the pork roast, and then just put the lid on that thing, and it'll make this tone. Or no, that's when you open it up, it goes. But seal it so that the pressure valve is on the seal setting, and I'll switch it on, hit the manual setting, and I'll make sure the timer is 60 minutes. And I did that overnight, and come morning, get a nice ready cooked roast, prime for pulling. And what I'll do is I'll take some tongs and a fork, and I'll pull the meat. I'll break it up in all of its juice, the natural juices that come with the meat, and the broth that I had put in there, because in a pressure cooker, you're not losing a whole lot of the moisture. It stays in there, so a lot of delicious moisture. And that was the second item that we prepared for our guest. And all the other things are sort of sides that people might want to get into, and it's not going to be an SNG. So we're talking about some people like to eat cornbread. My wife can make a cornbread that goes along with the chili for folks who want it. And she'll make some desserts. She'll cook some basically these cookie fudge type bars for any of the young ones who want some sort of dessert. And another one, it was sort of like a s'mores bar of some sort. So that's just for the guests. And so served that up for Saturday for the guests, and then Sunday we rolled around and had that ready for the guests as well. Actually, the pulled pork wasn't until the Sunday guest. So a little something to snack on other than chips. Right? It was good stuff. But that's what's cooking. And the other thing that I cooked more recently was a big old batch of mushroom soup. And I'll get into it real quick. It's just, throw in some ghee or butter into a medium heated pot or sauce container, and throw in some diced onions and let that sort of caramelize a little bit. Then throw in some chopped portobello mushrooms or whatever mushrooms you want to make soup out of. Then that'll sort of minimize all of the mushrooms will start to sort of shrink. Then you add some coconut milk, and then you throw in some broth, a bunch of salt and pepper, and you let that boil, and then you put a cover on it and let it simmer for about 15 minutes, and it's good to go. You can eat it as is, kind of chunky, or you can put it in a blender and you can whiz it up. Or if you have a hand immersion blender, you can go break it up, make it nice and creamy and smooth, and that's that. So that's what's been cooked in the kitchen. Yeah, food. Can't live with it, can't live without it. That's dumb. Yeah, I need some coffee. Coffee, please. So, it's been a while, and I'm due an update for the Ohlone 50k, and it's a lot of time has passed. It's just time that I needed. I apologize. A lot of stuff's been going on. I've been working on work, and I've been also building websites, and I've been, developing podcasts. It's just, things are pretty hectic, and, but it's all exciting and all good, and, I just need to sort of get back in the flow of things, get a nice sequence or schedule of things going, and it will be good. But, I like winging it, and I like having the flexibility to do whatever and whenever I want. And but yeah, I'll get right into it. I'll get into the run update. Yeah. Hey guys, so what I want to do is, because my description of the course and the event isn't going to be as awesome as me just reading it off of the email from the race directors. I'm just going to do that. So this is from one of the co-directors, or these are from the co-directors, Chiping and Larry England, and just so that I can paint a picture of the event and the day. And your heat training will not be wasted. The weather will be likely under 80 degrees Fahrenheit. My apologies for urging you to do heat training in my previous email. I'm sorry for this freezing Ohlone on Sunday, May 20, but as Larry said, this will be one of the best weather in the race history. I wish this loss of the heat brings your best day racing or even a PR. On arrival, the race starts at Stanford Ave, and it's notorious for limited parking and vandalism, so we strongly encourage you to park at Del Val. The free shuttle will take you to the start. The bus staggers to leave at 6:30 a.m. for the 30-minute ride. When arriving at Del Val, prepare to pay the $6 fee at the kiosk. The park is open at 5:30 a.m. And side note, so Del Val is the finish area. So the idea is that everyone will park at the finish, then the shuttle will take everyone to the start, and everyone has to run to their vehicles. So back to this email. At the start, you'll pick up your bib number when check-in. You may leave a finished drop bag there with your name and number. It will be transported to Del Val. The race starts at 8 a.m. sharp, with 10 full hours for you to get to Del Val by 6 p.m. If you believe you need more time, we have an early start at 7 a.m. Just show up early and be ready to go. So side note, the official start was at 8. There was an early start at 7. and I considered taking the early start, but this supposed 30-minute bus ride from the finish to the start was actually longer than 30 minutes, and actually our bus driver, there was the school district buses were provided somehow, which is awesome. Get in a school bus with a bunch of ultra runners, but the driver seemed to not be sure about how to get to where we needed to be, and some of the other runners were like giving him directions, and they had concern in their face that we weren't going to get to where we needed to be on time. And a bunch of us were just laughing at the whole situation. So back to the email on etiquette. No littering. Mountain lions are watching. Don't let our hand-working sweepers, aka your dear friends, pick up what you dropped. If you can pick up trash, aka plugging, you are awesome. Do let me know. Call out your bib numbers when arriving at an aid station. Make sure our radio personnel gets your number. We need to know everyone's whereabouts. Please thank profusely the volunteers spending their Sunday helping you. They had to hike strenuous miles or even camp overnight. Without volunteers, there is no event. Be respectful to park visitors for the first 4 miles at the Mission Peak area, 1 mile around Sunol, and half mile before the finish. We share the trail for each of our days. Be grateful to other volunteers working numerous hours before and after to make this even possible. Soak in the moment, share your joy, and embrace the pain that will become your pleasure later. This is what you paid for when over 100 volunteers work hard to make you a great day. On the course, for the first 4 miles, you'll climb over 2,516 feet to Mission Peak. Be respectful to many other volunteers who admire your valiance. You are the ambassador of our beloved sport. At mile 9, you have arrived at Sunol, the entrance of Ohlone Wilderness. There is no road access for the next 21 miles till the finish in Del Val. You'll be scrutinized on your capability for the coming arduous task or arduous trek. You may be asked to stop at Sunol or turn around at the next aid station, Backpacker, which is 3 miles away. Please strictly observe the decision from the aid station captains who are ultra running veterans. Otherwise, you'll most likely be lifted out by helicopter. When approaching Maggie's half acre, you'll be asked to summit the 3,817 feet Rose Peak and back with a wristband souvenir as the proof. You're entering the center of the wilderness manned by the brave Boy Scout Troop 290, who hiked tough miles and camped overnight there. Give them applause. From Rose Peak, the highest point of the course, it's all downhill, except some little hills. Feel free to stop by the self-service Stewart's Spring for water and the luxurious outhouse. At Schleiper Rock, our co-RD Larry England will be waiting for you like the past 19 years. The team will help you for the speedy downhill to William Gulch and immediately the Rocky Ridge climb to the last aid station, Stromer Spring. Only 2 miles to go. We'll be waiting for your finish to give you the unique award. Enjoy one of the best post-race barbecues to celebrate your accomplishment. Share your war stories and cheer your fellow runners. Yeah. And it says, please visit the race website, Ohlone50k.com, and make up your race plan in the next few days leading to your big day. See you on the beautiful Sunday. That was Chi-Ping Fu and Larry England, the co-directors of the Ohlone Wilderness 50k Trail Run. Awesome. What happened? Yeah, that's the skinny on the race day instructions leading up to race day, and it provided sort of the course description, aid stations, and the highest points, and the descents that and description of the volunteers that, you know, had I not read this, I would not have been able to share with you because I'm not that informed and not that good. So next, I'll kind of go through what was in my head and how I felt about the whole thing, and whether or not it's something that I'll do next year. But yeah, that's that. Okay, guys, so let's get right into it. My Ohlone 50k wilderness, or my Ohlone Wilderness 50k trail run experience. So if you heard a few podcasts ago, sort of the pre-run, you got to hear sort of my night before mindset about the whole thing. And so now we'll get into me, how I feel. I get to bed the night before, and I've got everything ready. I've been doing enough of these races now, and enough of the long solo runs, that I kind of know what I can roll with as far as gear and onboard. I don't even say not onboard, but stuff that I can carry that I can munch on and drink. The event's going to have a handful of aid stations, so there's always that opportunity to catch something to drink and something to eat while out on the course. But I always like to approach what I pack or what I carry with a sense of, just in case I go off course pretty severely, or something happens that I'm out on the trail without anything, without access to aid. So the things that I typically carry are a Hydro Pack. So this is the stuff that I've set aside so that I can get up the next morning, race morning, and take with me. So first is the Hydro Pack, and it's got a bladder, and I fill that just with water. The pack, the vest itself, has enough storage so that I'll jam like 1 or 2 packets of the Generation UCAN Superstarch, the plain. I'll shove that in the compartment where the bladder is. I'll also have a Ziploc bag, a small zip bag full of raw almonds, and I'll also have, this time around, I packed a couple of Epic bars. I learned that they were good to have on the last trail run that I did, so I packed a couple of those as well. I have a small Ziploc bag of electrolytes, I think they're S caps, and what else? And then I had one handheld bottle, which I pre-mixed a couple of packets of the Superstarch with water. I did that the morning of. I didn't do that the night before, but I set it aside so that I can prepare it. And that was pretty much it. Water, Superstarch, the nuts, and the electrolyte capsules, and the Epic bars, the meat bars. That's all the food that I got, stuff to consume. And I just had a tank, a tank top and shorts. The tank is nothing special. It's one of those technical material, polyester type material tanks. I typically wear it. And then the shorts are from the North Face. They're one of the better than naked line of shorts, which is an awesome pair. I actually have 2 of them now. They're awesome because the inner liner has a bunch of storage that allows me to store stuff over my thighs. It's got a bunch of storage behind the waistband and around the front of the waistband, depending on which model I have. So it's really cool. So when I'm out there, I actually have the nuts and the meat bar jammed in the leg of my shorts, and you can't even tell because the outer liner, the outer shell is just covering it all up. Pretty cool stuff. What else am I carrying? I always keep a small Ziploc or tube of Aquaforge, the petroleum jelly, just in case I'm out there and dealing with some chafage, just in case. And also another zip bag of wipes and or TP, tissue paper, toilet paper, just in case there's a strong need and there isn't a access to a restroom. What else? So the handheld bottle, I'll just put on vest pocket on the front. I'll bring my phone. I like to bring my phone. I know there are folks who don't want to bring a phone on the run, but I like to bring a phone on the run. Also, not just because I can call in case of emergency as long as there's signal, but the phone is also the camera. And at this point of my life, I want to be able to capture things and remember what I've been able to do, and share out. What else? I did bring the iPod Shuffle with me, just in case. It's small enough that it doesn't cause too much hassle carrying it around. Had my hat and some shades. Oh, I also had my arm sleeves on, and bought a pair of gloves and the new trekking poles that I bought specifically for the event to help me along the way and to reduce some of the load that may cause a leg injury to flare up. And that's pretty much everything I got. So, wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do is get coffee going. I think I got up like at 4:30, and I got the coffee going, and I started taking in some coffee with some heavy cream and giving my body time to sort of process all of that. And what I mean by processing is that I want to make sure that I get a decent poop in the morning before I head out, because I don't want to have to deal with it over at registration or over, more importantly, over the course of the run. So while I'm kind of waiting for things to kind of process, I'm getting ready, and basically getting ready is easy. It's just throwing on the shorts, throwing on the shirt, throwing in the socks, and make sure all that stuff that I recited is packed in a place where I need it. I have basically a drop bag, but not meant to be dropped. Just a bag full of stuff that I want to have, but not have to. Primarily a towel, a change of clothes, that kind of stuff, so that in the event after the event, and I'm just pretty gnarly and funky, and I need to kind of freshen up a bit before I head on home. I have what I need, and that stuff I just leave in the truck. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But before I slap on all the gear, I'm taking the precautions to, get the anti-chafing products and strategically apply them on my body where I know chafing can be an issue, and pretty straightforward. I like to take my driver's license and a debit card along with me, packed in my bag. I think this time around I even took my health insurance card. Just in case things went really, really wrong, and I needed that stuff for identification or payment or medical care. So yeah, then off I went to hit the road to locate the finish area in Livermore, Del Val, which is where we were going. The runners were all going to hop on a bus or several buses to be shuttled over to the start. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about Mighty. I want to talk to you about Mighty. What is Mighty? Check out Mighty on my partners page at ruwellsrunning.com/partners. Mighty allows you to play your Spotify music on the go without a phone or internet connection. It's a small device. It's about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches square. And you can sync your Spotify music and the Spotify podcasts, your playlists wirelessly, because Mighty works with Bluetooth and also has Wi-Fi. So it uses those Wi-Fi signals, technologies, what have you, so that you can sync from your Bluetooth-enabled phone to Mighty. And when you play Mighty, it works with your Bluetooth devices. Like I use the AirPods, the Apple AirPods. They work with that, and it also works with wired headphones. And the one way that I recently used Mighty is I've also plugged it into an auxiliary port in the vehicle. So let's say you have a little kid. I have a little kid. The little kid says, "Daddy, I want to use your phone." I'm like, okay, use my phone. Now, I don't have anything interesting to listen to because the radio sucks and I can't listen to my favorite playlists and podcasts on my iPhone because my daughter's using it. So what do? I just take the Mighty. I use an audio, the auxiliary jack, connect it to the Mighty, and every podcast and song that I've synced from my Spotify account gets loaded onto that was loaded onto Mighty is now playing in the vehicle. I don't need to have a connection to an internet because it's stored offline within the thing. And whenever I do get my phone back and I'm on my Spotify app and I'm adding more stuff to my playlist, all I've got to do is use the Mighty app, hit the sync button, and it'll make the updates onto the actual device, and I'm good to go. So yeah. It's also drop proof and water resistant. And it's cool. It's an alternative to what Apple used to have, the Apple Shuffle, the iPod Shuffle, which they're no longer supporting. So why don't you get a Mighty? It'll be great out on the run. You don't have to, let's say, you're not a fan of having to carry your phone, but you do want to have something to listen to when times kind of get kind of tough and you want a little bit of motivation or distraction. All you gotta do is carry the Mighty with you, and you'll be good to go. It's a good fit for runners. So if you're out, or anybody, not just runners, but it's a running podcast, and we talked about running time to time. Pick up the Mighty. It's only $85.99 on their website here in the US. But yeah, go to ruwellsrunning.com/partners. Click on the image there. That'll take you to my affiliate link and get your Mighty today. I have the black. Currently, they have them in black, white, or orange. So check it out. Pick out the one that you like best, and let me know how it goes. Mighty. All right, so let's just get to the start, shall we? So the race start is an entrance to the Mission Peak, the Sonol, I don't even know what you call it. There's just this really big hill. All I know is that there's this place called Mission Boulevard in Fremont, and it's alongside these big hills. Maybe you would call them a mountain, but there's an entrance to the trail there, and the bus takes us into the end of this street, Stanford Ave, and the buses unload all of the runners. There's already the general public there to enjoy the trail, but clearly, there's an event going on. And so I get down, and first order of business is check in, get your bib number, or your bib, which has a number, and get the tracking device strapped to your shoe. So, give my name, get my bib, get a couple of safety pins, more than a couple, typically 4. Then, head over to the next table. Nice little, kind of looks like a fiber board with some holes in it, and you get some nylon ties to fasten this timing chip, which is in this board, onto your lace over the top of one of your shoes. And they have some wire cutters to clip off the ends of the nylon ties. And the next order of business is stand in line for the potties, just to make sure that won't have anything to worry about. Took care of business, and just kind of stood around and felt like knew what I was going to do, but couldn't help but feel like a complete newbie. I met up with Chiping, the co-director, and exchanged a few words, hello and all that stuff, and I just kind of stood there, my gear, just did a little bit of stretching, but there's no place to really hang out, just be among everybody else who's trying to get ready and start. And start maybe like 5 minutes before start. Chiping says some things over the megaphone, and everybody sort of gathers around the entrance to the trail. And next thing you know, the event starts, and people just kind of start uphill. It starts off with a climb. It starts off kind of moderate, then it kind of winds around and starts to get a little bit more intense. And it was a good warm up. Me and my poles it was a good opportunity to get used to navigating and making progress with the poles. At this point it's just it's the start and enjoying the vibe, being among all the other participants, all the runners and all the other athletes. It's just a feel-good spot. The view is fantastic. I've never done the course before. I've never been up to Mission Peak, so this was my first opportunity to do that. And my concern were the cutoffs, the aid station cutoffs. There was this first climb to Mission Peak and then back down to get to, I think, what's called Stagecoach. And that's about mile 9. That's the first aid station cutoff. It was actually, as I as I made sure that I didn't get cut off and I was heading into that aid station, I came down, and it was first opportunity to catch Corbett standing there waving, to the participants, the runners. I kind of pretty nice. It was probably a surprise to see her and the other athletes there just to cheer everybody on. Just a massive wave and smile. The etiquette is to always run into the aid station smiling, and then to always thank the aid station volunteers and before you head out. So that was nice. What was even more of a surprise, a pleasant surprise, was at that aid station I caught a friend that I find, a friend who's a husband of a former colleague, who's a race director or quarter race director of some other events around Northern California. So it was, his name is Anil, and finally got a chance to see him. He was there. He turned around, gave some aid. I'm like, whoa, look at it's in. It's kind of weird when you spend a lot of time getting to know somebody online or just from afar, and then to finally see them face to face. It's like, oh my God, it's live in full effect. But yeah, we exchanged some hellos and pleasantries and had short conversation, and I was in good shape. Said my thanks and goodbyes and give my best to the family, and was off. Feeling good. And the next station cutoff was around mile 12, and it's just more climbing at this point. It was the start of a big ascent before it leveled off a little bit into mile 12. Got there, and at that point I had to quickly take off my pack, had to quickly take off my jacket. I had a lightweight jacket, which served me well at the beginning of the day of the race. And instead, I didn't want to make the mistake of just rolling it up kind of casually and have it fastened by some cord outside of my pack, because the last time I did that I completely lost the jacket during an event. So I just wired it up real small and I shoved it in the same compartment as the bladder in my hydro pack. So at this point it's 2 aid stations, or several aid stations, and all I've done is taken in water from the aid station, refilled my handheld with more water. The handheld, if you remember, I mentioned it's where I had all of the superstarch solution pre-mixed. So as I worked on it little by little, as I trickled it in and consumed out of the handheld, every time I got to an aid station, I just topped it off, more water. So it got more diluted as time went by, but it's my way of staying hydrated and front loading the nutrition ahead of time, because at the start it's going to be more dense of a solution, and then towards the tail end it gets watered down. Enjoyed some nuts, but I made sure that about 2 or 3 hours into it that I had one of those meat bars, and they're just really good out on the trail for me. Those meat bars, the savoriness, the meatiness, the saltiness that comes with it, just can't beat it. I used to just take the super starch and the nuts and then dabble with some of the chews or the chew products at the aid station, but meat's really great. The meat's really great. So here I am, Completed the 9-mile cutoff, beat the 12-mile cutoff, and feeling good that those were my short-term goals because I wanted to be able to progress through the event. And that was that. I qualified. I like to say I qualified. I have to suffer the rest of the course, the combined 10-hour event. So this was cool. Somewhere after mile 12, more climbing, great views. Being passed up by other runners, or running along others. And to be honest, it's not a whole lot of running when it's uphill. It's jog the flats, but a whole lot of hiking, right? And running downhill. And met up with Roger Burris. Didn't know who he was. Roger Burris is the husband of Sandy Vi, or Sandra Vi, the athlete, the female athlete who did the U.S. Transcon back in October. They live on this side of the bay, further east from where I'm at. But I was just chatting with Roger. He was a little bit behind me. He was catching up to me, and I just took advantage of his presence and had conversation, because at that point I just needed to get my mind off of some of the effort that I was putting out. And what better way than to have conversation? Got to know him a bit, where he's from and when he moved out here, and I started talking a little bit about when I started trail running, not too long ago, and talked about some of the early sort of road racing that I've done. Not racing, but road events for the shorter distances. Happened to mention the one time I met Marshall Ulrich at a pre-race sort of expo, those you do like a major city half marathon or marathon, and there's a big expo where participants can pick up their goodie bag and their bibs and whatnot the day before the race. So I was at one in San Jose, and I happened to mention that I, from across the room, noticed Marshall Ulrich there standing at the Injinji booth, and he had that look of there's somebody across the room who recognizes me. I mean, it's a half marathon event, if I'm not mistaken, and there's the legend himself, Marshall Ulrich. I approached him and I was like, wow, just very happy to see him and get to meet him. He was selling his book at the time. And I told that story to Roger, and Roger started telling me, like, I was spending time with with the Ulrichs and the Corbetts and this and that. He's like, Roger's really connected to a lot of these familiar names, these familiar popular figures in the sport. And so I ran with him, maybe just for, I don't know, Roger, what is it, like 5 miles? How much is the distance typically between aid stations? I want to say maybe 3 to 5 miles, something like that. So I basically ran with him, more like I held him back until the next aid station. But it was a good encounter, and that's what I love about doing these events. I came into it, yes, wanting to do the event, but I also came into it wanting to get to meet people. And Roger was one of the first guys I got to meet out on the trail. And then after we got to the next aid station, he basically said, "I'll see you at the finish line," and he was going to carry on. And I was like, "Go, you do you, and here I'm just going to kind of lay back here and be me and plow through it." So and he just went on, and I did my thing, and there was more distance between Roger and I, but that was okay. I was happy to have that encounter, and still in the game, I guess. So, yep, good times. All right, guys. So I'm gonna pick up right here. I'm situated in a different location recording, but recording nonetheless. I like this approach. I can just sort of record at any time, anywhere, and then just put the podcast together. But setting that aside, I want to pick off where I left off in the race report. I parted ways with Roger Burris on the trail after approximately mile 15, and so I was just out on my own. And starting to feel the fatigue. Starting to feel not so much the heat. It was the heat was there, but it wasn't a problem. After all, it was the coolest Ohlone 50k in history, if I'm not mistaken. But I was definitely feeling the fatigue and doing whatever I could to get my mind off of things. And the one thing that I did was I turned on a podcast that was sure to occupy my mind and and get me to laugh. And if anybody's interested, I was listening to the Koi Pond. Comedian Joe Coy has a podcast, and I just turned that thing on and let it play. I wasn't able to get through a whole episode because at around mile 17, at a climb on the way to Rose Peak at some point, before Rose Peak, because Rose Peak is the highest point of the course. I was just kind of trudging my way up the climb, taking some pauses, just keeping my poles down and just getting a few seconds of breather, only to go back up. So, essentially, I don't know if it was just fatigue or if it was a combination of fatigue and elevation, but I definitely needed to make stops, catch my breath, and continue on. I did enough of those stops to actually, slow myself down and get caught up with, I got caught by another runner. It was funny, at one moment I'm looking down these, I don't know if you would call them switchbacks, but they're somewhat of a switchback style, and I could look down the hill and I could see another runner who seemed pretty off in a distance, but after a few of my stops, that other runner was just right behind me, and so there I was, got caught by another runner, and at the same time had another person to get to know, and so I shut off the podcast, and me and this other runner, his name is Clem Choi, and he was 70 years of age, if I'm not mistaken, and basically from mile 17 to the finish, towards the finish, we ran alongside each other. We helped each other out. We told stories. We got to know each other, and meeting Roger Burris earlier was fantastic, and getting to meet Clem was, a super highlight for me. So no offense to Roger, both were highlights. Clem stood out because, he basically was with me most of the time. He's a veteran in the sport, and it was great. He's a remarkable athlete, and hopefully I can get him on the podcast. If not this podcast, I'd love to have him on the other podcast that I'm developing with Tony Portera. And, it'll be more ultra-specific. So I'd love to have him and Roger and anybody else who's interested in the ultra running type stuff. I'm developing a podcast with Tony Portera again, and that'll be a great place to share those stories, and get to know those personalities. Anyways, so from 17 to the end, there were it was great. It was great because I could do the climb with Clem. He's 70 and I'm 44, and he's just he's got that much ability to just kind of go up the hill seemingly effortlessly. Meanwhile, here I am, right, the noob, needing trekking poles to give me some sort of advantage and to keep me healthy. Clem's that athlete who's run Boston numerous times, and he's ran Western States numerous times, and I think the day before this Ohlone 50k, he had done another 50k, and he had a bruising on his leg because he had wiped out, but he there he was, he was whipping my ass, and I was happy to be whipped, Let's see, I learned something about myself, I'm still at that point where I'm learning, I'm trying to figure things out, and running alongside Clem, and also Roger sort of taught me, that I can't, I need to be comfortable with the discomfort. And for too long, as I started out, I've been backing off because of discomfort. And I'm having to learn that, I'm realizing that there's a level of that discomfort that is good. And that's sort of a little bit of a push, and to not fall victim to backing off. Those are my boys in the background, my crazy boys. So I don't know if you could hear them. So yeah, and it was me having to keep pace with Clem, believe it or not, once we got over a climb and we got on a runnable section, my mode would have been, okay, I got up that climb, let me sort of just kind of ease off a little bit and appreciate that I made that climb. Meanwhile, someone more experienced like Clem, you get to the top, it's not time to dilly-dally, it's time to take advantage of a runnable section and go. So there I was right behind him and keeping up and realizing like, oh, okay, this is what it's about. So I got a lot to learn, and so there was a lot of that, and there was also a lot of conversation. There were some points where we got off course. It wasn't a significant amount of getting off course, but it was sort of like, wait a minute, this is a dead end. Let's go backtrack, several yards and see where the last marker was. And, fortunately it wasn't too much. We weren't too much off course, and we were able to get back on track. But every time we got to an aid station, he was so gracious. He has a lot of friends and a lot of fans on the course, and there was one of his friends who said, "Hi, Clem, we'll see you at the finish line, and we'll be celebrating with you." And then they would point at me, and we'll probably be scraping you off the trail, kind of deal. And I loved it. I loved every moment of it. Now, it's just, I've allowed so much time to pass since the event, and there was a certain feeling from the event that keeps me wanting to come back and doing these types of things and meeting folks. And I don't know, man. It's I don't know if it's addicting or if it's just when I'm out doing this event, the location, the people, everything, my ability to complete the course, I just felt alive, right? It's special, and I wish that, if you do this type of thing, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, I think, give it a shot. I'm not saying go out and do 50k because chances are you'll beat my ass and I'll be jealous. No, just being out there and challenging yourself, being outdoors, meeting people, getting out of your comfort zone. It's great. It's really good. I wish I could do more of it than I'm able to, but I'll take what I can get. Let's see, where were we at? Yeah, another thing about Clem and how kind he was. Every time we got to an aid station, he would introduce his friends to me. He would say something like, "Oh, this is Ruel. He's from Guam." And we help each other out when we're out on the course. It's just really. There was one. At one point, we met up with some hikers, and they're from there. I don't know if they may have been volunteers or not, but they were definitely part of the trail running community, because one of the guys was wearing like a shirt or a jacket or something that had an emblem that described a different ultra event. But someone's like looked at me and pointed at Clem and said, "Is he your dad?" Or the other way around, "Is he your son?" And the age difference was there. He could have been, but I jokingly said, "Well, if he wants to adopt me, that'd be cool. I'd be honored." But yeah, at some point in the, Clem, there was a final climb. It's kind of like deceiving. You look like you're doing this massive descent, but there is a section. I think it was estimated to be I don't know, not more than a mile. And from there it led to a bunch of dense switchbacks in the woods, and then from there we kind of ended up out in the open, and it was getting really breezy at that point, and the wind chill was really felt it, and I had to pull back up my arm sleeves, which didn't really help. I felt more cold because by that, I was at some point earlier in the race, I pulled my arm sleeves down to my wrists and just ran that way. Then it got all wet, and then when I pulled it back up, I just felt cold. but it was nice. It's a spectacular course. I know I'll want to do it again. And we got to the final aid station, which was a couple miles to the finish, and it was there where both Clem and I, got some aid station stuff. I finally ate something out of the aid station, and it was a little paper cup of Coca-Cola. That's what it was. And after at about almost 30 miles and several hours out on the course, that was the best Coca-Cola I've ever had in my life. So we left that aid station, and it was basically every man for himself. That's my take, because Clem, it was totally runnable, and it was basically down. It was a downhill type deal, and Clem was off, right? And I as much as I wanted to stay with him, my feet wouldn't allow me. My feet were just pretty banged up, and which was a good thing if it was just my feet, because if I were to do it all over again, I would just say to hell with my feet and run until they fell off. If that's, looking back, I'm thankful that it was just my feet, because in a previous race, it would have been my whole leg would have been out of commission because of my knee and other things. So I was, I didn't have that issue, and I had the help of the poles. I didn't really use the poles during the descent, that final couple miles, because they just held me back. But yeah, definitely the distance between Clem and I grew, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. In my mind leading up to, in the middle of the event running with Clem, I imagined like, it'd be cool if we kind of like finish together, that kind of thing. But, that was just too much thinking ahead, because anything could happen. But here we were, the final couple miles, and, he was approaching the finish, and I knew when he got to the finish because I could hear tons of cheering. It was fantastic. And, I just kept on making my way towards the finish, and I was celebrating his finish where I was at. And then when I got to my finish, there was a crowd there, which is great. And everyone was cheering, and, people yelling my name and stuff. And it was special. It was special. And I got to the finish. Chiping was there, he congratulated me like he does all the finishers. And it was the best. It was the best. I wish that I wish the moment could be captured in every aspect that I experienced it. I wish that the emotions and the feeling could be captured and shared. But that's just my memory, and I wish that everybody could experience their own, But yeah, that was it. I finished, and I didn't meet the 10-hour cutoff. Neither did Clem, but we finished the course, and it was. I met also. I also met Mark Tanaka, as Clem and I were making our way towards the finish. Mark Tanaka, he's also a doc, right, or a physician, and he finished the event way longer, and he kind of went out on the course just to check to make sure that Clem and I were okay, and so he was out there running the tail end of the course to meet up with us, and he had a stethoscope around his neck. It's fun. He was also trying to take pictures of us on our way to the finish. It was great. So the question was, would we be given a finishing time, if we didn't make the cutoff? And I'm like, I don't really care. I just want to finish the course. That's just what's most important. As much as I want to finish before cutoff, to finish the course, and for there to still be people at the end, means a whole lot more. And that's what we did. So unofficial finishers, but finishers nonetheless. Got to celebrate just as everybody else celebrates, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. It's funny, right after, I thought, no, I'm too chicken to take on next year, because chances are it's going to be super hot next year. But then after I give it more thought, I'm like, that's the real one, when it's hot, and that'll be the great test. And so yeah, I'm up for it again. I love the family over at the Ohlone 50k family, if you will, to do it again, and to try and be a part of that family would be special. I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot of other things to talk about for this sort of report, but that's okay, So thanks for sticking around, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Ruel's Running Podcast with Ruel. If you like what you just heard, share it with your friends and your enemies. Also, be sure to check out the site over at ruelsrunning.com. This has been another Coffee with Heavy Cream production. Join us next time for another silly show of Ruel's Running Podcast.